Have you ever noticed something strange? Some people can sit through heartbreak without shedding a single tear, while others tear up because of a heartfelt conversation, a touching movie, or even a stranger's unexpected kindness. For years, we've been taught that the second group is simply too emotional. But what if that's completely wrong? What if crying isn't proof that you're weak, but proof that your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do? Psychology suggests that people who cry easily often have nervous systems that process emotions more deeply than average. Their tears aren't signs of failure, they're signs of awareness, empathy, and emotional intelligence. So before you apologize for being too sensitive, stay with me. By the end of this video, you may never look at your tears the same way again. Most of us grow up hearing the same phrases: stop crying, Danda Brody, be strong, tough people don't get emotional. After hearing those messages enough times, many people begin to believe something is wrong with them whenever tears appear. But science paints a very different picture. Humans are the only known species that produce tears because of emotions. Animals can feel fear, attachment, and even grief, but emotional tears are uniquely human. That alone tells us they serve a purpose far beyond simply wetting the eyes. Researchers divide tears into 3 categories. The first are basal tears, which constantly protect and moisturize your eyes. The second are reflex tears, produced when smoke, dust, or onions irritate them. Then there are emotional tears, the ones that appear during sadness, overwhelming happiness, relief, or deep compassion. Here's what makes them remarkable. Emotional tears contain different chemical compounds than ordinary tears. Scientists have found higher levels of stress-related substances inside them, suggesting that crying may help your body reduce emotional overload after intense experiences. In other words, your body isn't falling apart, it's trying to recover. Think about what usually happens after a long cry. Your breathing gradually slows, the tightness in your chest begins to fade, your shoulders relax. Many people even feel exhausted enough to fall asleep. That's because your nervous system shifts from a high-alert state into a calmer one. Instead of staying trapped in emotional tension, your body begins restoring balance. Crying isn't always the breakdown. Very often, it's the reset. This changes the way we should think about emotional people. Someone who cries easily isn't necessarily less resilient. In many cases, they're simply responding honestly to what their brain and body are experiencing, instead of forcing those feelings underground. And that's an important difference, because emotions that are acknowledged can move through us. The ones we constantly bury usually stay with us much longer. But that still leaves one big question. Why do some people cry so much more easily than others? Why can 2 people experience the exact same situation, yet one remains completely composed while the other is overwhelmed with emotion? The answer isn't about personality alone. It begins inside the brain itself. So why does one person hold back every emotion, while another tears up almost instantly? The answer lies in the way different brains process emotional information. Psychologists have discovered that emotional sensitivity isn't simply a habit. For many people, it's part of how their nervous system is naturally wired. One of the key players is a small structure deep inside the brain called the amygdala. Think of it as your emotional radar. Every conversation, facial expression, and life event passes through this system. It constantly asks one question: how emotionally important is this? In highly sensitive people, that radar tends to react more quickly and more intensely. A small act of kindness, a painful memory, a heartfelt goodbye. These moments create stronger emotional signals than they do for most people. That isn't a flaw. It's heightened emotional awareness. But emotion alone doesn't explain everything. Another important part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, helps us understand, organize, and make sense of what we feel. In emotionally aware people, these 2 systems communicate constantly. Instead of ignoring emotions, they examine them. They ask questions. Why did that affect me? What does this feeling mean? What can I learn from this experience? This is why people who cry easily often spend more time reflecting on life than avoiding it. They don't just experience emotions, they process them. Then there's another fascinating piece of the puzzle: mirror neurons. These specialized brain cells become active not only when you experience something yourself, but also when you watch someone else experience it. That's why some people cry during emotional movies, or feel heartbroken after hearing a stranger's story. Their brain isn't simply observing another person's pain. For a brief moment, it's simulating it. They feel connected to emotions that aren't even their own. Psychologist Elaine Aron introduced the idea of the highly sensitive person, suggesting that around 15–20% of people are born with nervous systems that process information more deeply than average. These individuals notice subtle facial expressions, tiny changes in tone, hidden emotions, details that many others completely overlook. Living this way isn't always easy. Crowded places can feel exhausting. Arguments can linger in the mind for days. Negative criticism can cut deeper than expected. But there's another side that people rarely talk about. These same individuals often become incredible listeners, compassionate friends, creative thinkers, supportive partners, and leaders who understand people instead of simply managing them. Because when you notice what others miss, you naturally connect with people in ways others can't. This brings us to one of psychology's most misunderstood discoveries. People who cry easily are often assumed to be emotionally unstable. Yet research frequently points in the opposite direction. Many of them score surprisingly high in emotional intelligence. Why? Because emotional intelligence begins with one simple ability: recognizing what you're feeling. If someone never allows themselves to feel sadness, disappointment, gratitude, or love, how can they truly understand those emotions in others? People who cry don't always have stronger emotions. They often have fewer walls between themselves and those emotions. They notice feelings instead of hiding them. They allow emotions to move instead of trapping them inside. And that ability becomes the foundation of empathy, trust, and meaningful relationships. But here's something even more fascinating. The way you respond to tears today may have started long before adulthood. In many cases, it began during childhood. To truly understand why some people cry so easily, we have to go back to where our emotional patterns first begin: childhood. Long before we learned how to hide our feelings, we learned whether those feelings were accepted. According to attachment psychology, children pay close attention to how adults respond when they become emotional. If a child hears things like, "It's okay to cry," "I'm here for you, tell me what you're feeling," they usually grow up believing that emotions are normal and safe to express. But many children hear something very different. "Stop crying, you're being dramatic. Only weak people cry." Over time, those messages create shame around emotions. Some people respond by burying every feeling they have. Others never lose their sensitivity. They simply spend years apologizing for it. And that's the important difference. Crying easily doesn't mean your emotions are out of control. Sometimes it means your emotional system refused to go numb. Psychologists often compare highly sensitive people to delicate flowers, not because they're fragile, but because they respond more strongly to the environment around them. When surrounded by kindness, they often flourish. When surrounded by constant criticism or emotional neglect, they may struggle more deeply than others. Yet many of these same people grow into incredibly compassionate adults. Their sensitivity becomes the reason they comfort others so naturally, the reason they notice pain before anyone else does, the reason people feel safe opening up to them, because they've learned what emotional pain feels like, and they never want someone else to carry it alone. Now here's another misunderstanding. People often confuse suppressing emotions with controlling emotions. Those are not the same thing. Suppressing emotions means pretending they don't exist. You smile while you're hurting. You stay silent when you're overwhelmed. You convince yourself you're fine even when you're not. It may look strong from the outside, but inside, the stress keeps building. Real emotional regulation works differently. It allows emotions to be felt, understood, and gradually released. That's why many therapists explain that healthy crying can be part of emotional recovery. Instead of trapping stress inside the body, you're allowing yourself to process it. Think about grief. The people who heal aren't always the ones who never cry. Often, they're the ones who let themselves mourn honestly. They cry, they remember, they accept, and little by little, they begin moving forward. Healing doesn't happen because the tears appear. Healing happens because the emotions are finally allowed to move. So what do your tears actually say about you? They may reveal that you notice emotions other people ignore, that your empathy runs deeper than average, that your brain processes experiences carefully instead of rushing past them, that you value genuine connection over pretending everything is okay. And perhaps most importantly, they show that you're still emotionally open in a world that often rewards emotional distance. That's not something to be ashamed of, it's something to protect. Because history is filled with artists, teachers, counselors, leaders, and caregivers whose greatest strength wasn't hiding their emotions, it was understanding them. So if you've spent years believing your tears made you weak, maybe it's time to question that belief. Maybe your sensitivity isn't the problem. Maybe it's one of the qualities that makes you deeply human. The next time someone tells you to stop being so sensitive, remember this: sensitivity isn't the opposite of strength. Sometimes, it's the very reason strength exists. If this video helped you see yourself in a new way, let me know in the comments. Have you ever been told you're too emotional? I'd love to hear your story. And if you're curious about the hidden psychology behind everyday human behavior, make sure to subscribe. Because the better you understand your mind, the less you'll underestimate yourself. Your tears were never proof of weakness. They've always been proof that your heart still has the courage to feel.